Today's project is rather serendipitous because I found another dresser exactly like the one I did a year ago for a challenge. And it was kind of the one that got away. It combines two of my favorite elements, and that is campaign and burlwood. Let me show it to you.
So for my challenge last year, that was the Dark Academia, I refinished this exact same dresser. I had found it local from another fellow furniture flipper, and it was missing hardware, and so I had to salvage it. But this was honestly, this is by Hickory. This is one of the very best quality dressers I've ever had the pleasure of working on. This particular one had more veneer damage. You can see there's a big chunk missing out of the side. I have several other areas that I'm going to have to patch. It was missing 3 of the hardwares, which this hardware, I ended up having to replace all 6 of the pulls on the last dresser, and that was $350. But I kept the ones that weren't damaged, and so I was able to salvage the ones from the last dresser to be able to use for this dresser. So I didn't have to outlay any extra funds for hardware on this one because I paid $250 for this dresser local, which is a little high for a flip. But if I was going to flip it, I could probably sell it easily for $1,800 plus, probably pushing $2,000 easy, if not more. So I am thinking about keeping this one. So I was fine with paying the $250. I'd even pay $250 on this one for if I was flipping it. But I'm just going to go ahead and start by going ahead and taking all the hardware off. I do take the doors off because I like to really take those doors off to make sure that I get a really good finish. Sometimes trying to take hinges off of vintage pieces is difficult. So what I like to do is when I take these hinges off, I'm going to label them. So the area that's facing the drawer, I'm just going to label it left or right, top or bottom. And then when I go through the process, I'm going to boil all my hardware. And you'd be surprised if you put it with a Sharpie, it can go through the refinishing process and the Sharpie markers still stay there. If you'll notice, sometimes there's a pattern on the dressers. You'll see it says 161 and it has a left and a right, and then it has A, B, and C. So it kind of helps you. Sometimes there's a little code that you can figure out whether it's left or right or ABC. And then this one actually had a stamp on the bottom of the drawer that said August of '78. So I know exactly what the age is. I decided on the veneer piece, I'm just going to replace that entire piece. I'm not going to patch it in. So I'm just going to use my 5-in-1 tool and a hammer, and I'm just going to try to get this piece off in one long piece if possible. Today I'm using Safinol. It's a soy-based stripper, I believe. I got it at my local Ace Hardware. I've also seen it on Amazon. This is about the 3rd time I've used it, and it works really well. I do go ahead and still wear a respirator. I know sometimes just because it says Safinol, I still wear my gloves and I wear my respirator with it. So you're just going to put it on, wait, let it do its thing, and then I come back. My method for stripping is I use my carbide scraper. You can use a putty knife, but I go very gently. I use my carbide scraper really as a putty knife because I'm barely putting any pressure on it. So I just go ahead and scrape off as much of that finish as I can, and then I'm going to come back with acetone. And I'm going to use paper towels first. I'm going to try to get off some residue, and then I'll use some steel wool. I use 00, which is kind of a medium grit steel wool, in conjunction with the acetone, and I try to get the rest of that finish off. The more finish I can get off, then the less sanding I have to do. So I was able to get quite a bit off on this particular piece, and so then I was able to start at 150 on my sanding, and so it really saved a lot of time. And then, with the burlwood's very fragile. I don't want to sand a lot with it. So I like to use a chemical stripper with the burlwood because it really helps protect it. So for these pieces, I like to decant a little bit of the acetone in just a little glass jelly jar, and then I use my wire brushes to get into any kind of crevice that's hard to reach with my carbide scraper or any kind of abrasive. So for the corner that I need to fix, you can see there's a little bit of damage on the corner. So I'm just going to use some Bondo. It's a two-part system, and it's 1 part putty, 1 part hardener. I'm just going to form a little corner because I'm just going to go ahead and put veneer over this, but I need the substrate to be a full corner and be really smooth. Once I have all the stripper off, I'm ready to go ahead and go through the sanding process. So because so much of the stripper came off, I actually started at 150 for the grit, and I'm just going to go up to 180, and then I'm going to pause. I had a pretty good scratch on the top, so even though I did 150, I'm going to go down to 80 grit to really get down into a little bit further down to get that scratch out. Then I'll have to work my way back up on the grits. I'll go to 120, 150, 180, and I'll work my way back up because you just can't just do 80 because then the surrounding areas won't look right. So you're just going to have to smooth that area out. And then once I'm done with everything, I'm going to clean it with a 50-50 mixture of denatured alcohol and water. These little contour pads are great for getting into detail areas. You can just find one that matches the profile that you're working on. You wrap your sandpaper around it, and it really helps you get into those little detailed areas. These kind of drawers are a little bit harder, a little bit trickier to actually sand. Burlwood doesn't really have a direction. So what I've read is that you just pick a direction that you want to go and just make sure that you're consistent. And so I've chosen to go with the length of the drawer. So I'm going to go left to right, but then the sides have a banding of wood. So I made sure I go with the direction on the sides. After I sand, I'm going to go ahead and make sure I do all of my repairs. So I have some areas that need a little bit of wood filler that I'm just going to fill in before I move on to the staining process. Here's white oak veneer. I took the chunk of veneer that I took off to Woodcraft, and they felt that it was an oak. So this is what they recommended that I use to replace the areas. You can see I have a long band there that I'm missing. So I'm just going to cover that area with some painter's tape, fill it in, transfer those markings to the veneer, cut a piece out, and then glue it in place. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sand it smooth. If I have any areas that I need to smooth out, I'll add some additional wood filler, and then I'll come back later with some blend all sticks and blend it all into the surrounding wood. This is a paper-backed veneer, so the company recommended Titebond 2 for the adhesion. So I'm just going to decant some. I'm just going to kind of hold up my piece of veneer and just kind of cut off any excess that I don't need. And then I'm going to roller on some glue and then clamp it on right away and let it set up. Once it's dry, I'm going to go ahead and start trimming it down. So I have a razor blade. I'm just going to try to cut off as close to the edge as I can. Then I'll come back and sand it smooth. So this is really thin veneer, and you can see on the top there I'm having a little bit of problem. So I was using my razor blade, but it kind of started peeling the veneer a little bit. You can see I had a little problem there on the edge. So I decided to glue that part back up, and then I'm just going to use a sandpaper. I'm going to go real gentle in one direction if possible, and then I'm just trying to get that down and get it smooth. So I'm sure someone will have a suggestion of an easier way when it's on an end grain like that. It was very easy cutting it going vertical, but it was a little bit different going horizontal.
Okay, everything is sanded down and I am ready to go to stain. So I went to Woodcraft and spent a ridiculous amount of time trying to find a stain. I want something that's light-ish, not looking for like a washed out look or paint wash. I want something that is a little bit more rich, maybe a mid-tone. I don't want to go too dark. I want that grain to really pop. So I looked at all of their, stains. I'm usually a gel stain fan, but at the end of the day, I ended up going with General Finishes oil-based stain, and this is the color Salem. Never used it before, so I just really liked the tone of it, and so I thought it would go really good. Sometimes you just never know what you're going to get with something. It kind of had a bit of an orange tinge to it before I stripped it, so sometimes you just don't know. So I'm going to try it and see if I like it. Hopefully I will. I am going to put a preconditioner on it first. So this is usually for more hard to stain woods like maple or pine, but just in case, I did some research because I normally use gel stains and I use like mineral spirits over it as kind of a preconditioner, but with the oil stains, when I looked it up, this is what they recommended that you put underneath it. So just in case, I'm going to do it. You apply it, you wait 15 minutes, wipe off the excess, and then you need to go ahead and apply your stain within 2 hours of the pre-stain conditioner. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm excited. I was thinking about a dye stain, but dye stains are kind of one and done because they penetrate super deep into your wood. So you can go ahead and layer it with like a gel stain or another stain on top of it. You could go with a water-based stain, but I didn't want to do that. So I think the oil makes things give a piece a lot of depth. So that's kind of what I'm going for. I want a lot of depth on this piece. So let's try it.
So now I'm ready to make my repairs. I'm going to use Mohawk System. This is their blend all sticks in conjunction with their vinyl sealer, which just seals up each layer. So you're just supposed to take these and you're just supposed to start with a light color first, and you're just going to blend in the repair to match the surrounding wood. So it's just kind of like you're just painting in the grain. So I start light, and this is a skill I am working on. So some of my repairs look great, and some of them I'm like, you know what, I think I could have done better. But it's just a skill you have to continually practice. And honestly, I think I would have done better if I had, after the repair, I think I should have gone over it again with the wood stain, the oil-based stain, just to kind of one more chance to kind of blend it into the surroundings. I think some of my repairs are really good, and I think some of them could have been better. So again, it's something that you got to practice. Every time I think I'll get better. Sometimes you have to do it in layers. So I'll do a little bit, and then I'll seal it, and then I'll go to another area, and then I'll come back after it's dried, and I'll do another layer. So it's just kind of a layering process. It's really just it's called in painting, and really it's literally like you're painting in the grain. Once all that dries, then I'm ready to go ahead and seal. So I'm using Osmo's Poly-X oil. This is a hard wax oil. It's very easy to apply. You literally just either wipe it on, roll it on, and then you just let it set for a couple minutes and then you wipe off the excess. So it's really easy to apply. I like to put on at least 2 coats, sometimes 3 coats on the top. It's a really beautiful finish, and it's a very durable finish, and it's something that can actually be refreshed. So you can give it a light sand and reapply it if needed. I've used it on a few pieces in my own home, and it holds up really well. So for the hardware, I always like to boil some water, add some vinegar, and then I like to let my hardware soak in that. And then once it's had a chance to soak, I come back with some very fine steel wool and some Barkeeper's Friend, and I give it a really good polish. Sometimes it turns out really good, and then sometimes it needs a little bit more help. So the handles turned out really well, but the corner pieces were a little pitted. So I had to end up sanding those down, and then I gave them a nice little spray paint with my favorite gold paint. Before I reattach the hardware, I'm just going to go over the drawer. I'm going to sand out any imperfections, and then I'm going to clean it with a 50-50 mixture of denatured alcohol and water. And then I'm going to apply a little bit of Danish oil. This is medium walnut, and just kind of revives that finish on the inside. For the hinges, I had labeled the doors, and now I'm just going to match up the door with the right hinge, and I just go ahead and re-screw in the hinges. So it makes a really nice way to just make sure that you're putting the correct hinge on the correct door. The magnetic latches were broken, so I always like to keep these on hand because these are pretty easy to replace. It must be pretty standard sizes because usually the screw holes match up perfectly. There is a little bit of give in them, so you can move them forward or backwards if you need to make some adjustment on the drawers. Here's the screws that I like to use. Now I'm ready to reattach the hardware. Okay, let's look back at the before. At first glance, it looks like it's in really great shape, but as you can see, the hardware was in pretty rough shape. I was missing several pieces. The corner pieces were pretty pitted. I had some pretty significant veneer damage on one of the sides, but you can see it's a quality piece. I love all of the storage that it has, but I definitely had some issues on the top there. Of course, on the big piece at the bottom that had to be completely redone. And then, of course, I had some areas there at the base that had some issues as well. But man, so many really cool original details. It's really hard to find these little, I think they're like jewelry or coin catchers. So it's very unusual to find these pieces. But after a full strip and all that sanding, here is the finished product. It's actually pretty similar, isn't it? I really think the tone is just a little bit less orange, which is what I wanted. I wanted a nice kind of a mid-tone. I wanted that burlwood to pop, which I really think it does. Can you believe that grain on the top? I just love it. I know people don't like burlwood, which I don't understand how they don't like it, but I love it. You're going to see some of the areas here at the base that I had to fix. Here's some of my veneer repairs. Here's the piece that I had to replace. It looks pretty good. Like I said, some of my repairs I could have been better, but it's something I'm learning. And every time I do it, I'm going to get better. But wow, I just think it turned out fabulous. Enjoy some of these videos and I'll come back at the end. Right. So tell me what you think. Are you a burlwood fan? Would you have done a different color? Tell me in the comments. And thanks so much for watching.